Officially, World War II is dated to September 1939. In practice, it began earlier. The next World War will not be declared. Historians will set its start date after the fact. It may already be underway. For now, most conflicts are proxy wars, fought by other people's hands on other people's territory at low to medium intensity. If that continues, the world could shake for decades. If escalation comes, major powers and blocs will collide directly. The end may come sooner, but destruction and casualties could exceed those of 1945. War has always accelerated technology. Computers, nuclear power, rockets, jet aircraft, radar, microwave ovens, and mass adoption of antibiotics. Much of it spurred by World War II. Recent years have already reshaped warfare, but the most significant changes still lie ahead. This video examines the next 10-15 years of military technology: drones, artificial intelligence, space, armored vehicles, artillery, aviation, naval warfare, robotics, and brain-computer interfaces, along with shifts in tactics and the economics of war. Many things that feel like science fiction are real. Some ideas that seem promising do not survive contact with reality. Ready? Lock and load. Drones. The clearest leap is the drone revolution. In Terminator, the human-machine war was set in our era.
I am not stupid, you know. They cannot make things like that yet.
Not yet. Not for about 40 years.
People are already fighting drones, still operated by people for now, and drones are increasingly fighting each other. Soon, machines will radically reshape the battlefield, nearly pushing people off it. One has to expect that future battlefields will, in all likelihood, be saturated with drones. In a few years, drones have gone from niche tools to distinct branch of service. Dedicated UAV units are forming. Soon, drones will be standard kit at every level, from squads to headquarters. Everyone needs their own drones. Infantry need them for reconnaissance. For a platoon leader, it's a flying pair of binoculars. Tanks need them for target curing. The 21st century hunter-killer is an armored vehicle working with its own quadcopter. Armored vehicles will routinely carry scout drones and have base for interceptor drones. Logistics needs them for the last mile. Near the line, heavy armor grows less safe by the week, so people in drones handle deliveries. There have been cases where a single soldier held a position. If he could direct his side, water, food, and ammunition reached him by air and by ground. Today, the kill zone for large vehicles starts roughly 5 to 10 kilometers from the front, and it's growing. Medics use drones to deliver medicines and equipment. Heavy UAVs are already being tested for casualty evacuation. In World War II, the wounded sometimes rode in pods slung under biplanes. Terrifying, but speed matters. It's time to revisit the idea with modern hardware. Engineers use drones for remote mining and demining. Rapid and recon teams need not slog in if they can drop ammunition from above. Dedicated sapper drone units already exist. Fully autonomous systems that lay and lift mines without an operator are next. Once, artillery permeated the force, from company mortars to one-off super-heavy guns. The same is happening with drones. A light quadcopter will sit with every platoon, perhaps every squad. Higher echelons get a larger, more varied zoo, from palm-sized sparrows to big reconnaissance and strike platforms with ranges in the hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. Drones are changing the depth of the fight. 5 kilometers from the line of contact is no longer the rear. 20 isn't safe either. As ranges grow, the kill zone will push back by tens, then hundreds of kilometers. Command posts keep moving back. It's easier to run a fight from a dugout with screens and relays than from the line, but the longer the enemy's reach, the deeper you go. That drives battalion, brigade, and division commanders towards low-signature tactics. In rural areas, go to ground. In cities, blend into the urban background. Logistics will shift to civilian vehicles, sometimes without even repainting them. An army truck can be spotted and burned hundreds of kilometers from the front. A civilian pickup has better odds. Headquarters will move farther back and underground. Modern munitions can come through the door or down a vent. Forces will have to dig fast, not only with excavators, but likely with tunneling shields. Gaza offers a vivid example. Israel fields are overwhelming firepower, yet parts of Hamas's tunnel system, though heavily damaged, still function. Years of construction have made complete destruction difficult. In response, tunnel hunter drones may emerge, compact platforms with cameras, thermal imagers, and weapons to clear anything that moves. Today's battlefield often looks like a duel of remote systems. On October 7, 2023, Hamas breached an Israeli perimeter after quadcopters dropped munitions on remotely operated gun turrets. Foot soldiers pushed into a base, screens went dark, and the turret operators were captured. In the next 10 to 15 years, the air over battlefields will grow murky with swarms. Even now, kilometer-long nets are stretched over roads to deter drones. That's only a preview. As the rear becomes more vulnerable, supply lines deep in the battle space will break into protected segments with point air defenses, autonomous turrets armed with machine guns, automatic shotguns, and microwave systems to tear apart swarms. Drone dominance forces dispersion. Massing is pointless and dangerous. Units advance as small, widely spaced teams. Ammo depots will split into networks of small caches. A large dump is easy to spot from traffic and easy to erase. Transport trends towards light, nimble vehicles. Motorcycles, quads, buggies, and pickups. Heavy drones may ferry assault teams. If they can evacuate the wounded, they can shuttle infantry and heavy kit. Hauling a mortar or RPG on foot exhausts soldiers. It's different when a bird follows with what they need. The drone revolution has thinned the front. A classic infantry line isn't an attack anymore. It's a sacrifice to the gods of war. Assault groups can be as small as 2-4 troops. Tank fight, shoot and scoot, sometimes from fully concealed positions. The demands on each soldier rise sharply. A modern rifleman must do almost everything inside a tiny unit, sometimes just a pair. He needs strong first aid skills, working knowledge of explosives and mines, and the ability to pass precise target data. And he still has to shoot, cleanly and accurately, because sometimes the only way to stop an incoming FPV is to drop it out of the sky. He's also a data operator. Headquarters will drown in inputs from UAVs, satellites, vehicle sensors, and the troops themselves. Digital command and control will become mandatory. For a commander, the fight will resemble a real-time strategy map. Friendlies and hostiles visible, units box selectable, the volume of information will require automation. The end state of this race may be near total eviction of people from the kill zone. On their own, drones already do most tasks. Scout, supply, strike, lay and clear minefields, and hunt other drones. They can even take prisoners, escorting an enemy soldier under threat of munition drop. The next logical step is all-machine assault teams. FPV and bomb droppers soften defenses, gun-carrying assault drones clear and hold, high-flying reconnaissance keeps the picture current. Relay drones sustain communications, carriers move ammunition and batteries, motherships deploy reinforcements. Recovery drones pull damaged systems, while forward points repair and rearm the advancing swarm. On such a battlefield, humans show up only when truly necessary, and only as specialized experts. Some tasks remain human. In complex gray zone situations, distinguishing combatants from civilians, clearing rooms and establishing new fixed positions require people to decide and act. Even then, time in the kill zone should be minimal, and headcount small. The field will belong to very small teams of highly trained, well-equipped personnel. What we expect of regular infantry will increasingly resemble today's special operation forces. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is already being used on the battlefield, primarily for analyzing intelligence and for automating drone operations. However, over time, AI will reshape warfare more than anything else. AI is far more dangerous than nuclear weapons. A nuclear bomb, though deadly, is merely another type of munition, whereas advanced military-grade AI offers unprecedented advantages and a powerful temptation to use it. With AI, it may be possible to create a whole new generation of weapons that no one else has. AI can radically boost force effectiveness by speeding up reconnaissance, optimizing logistics, scaling strike capacity, and strengthening the industrial base. During the 12-day war in June 2025, Israel not only had a numerical advantage over Iran, taking into account its superior air power, but also technological, organizational, and personnel advantages. Israel dealt Iran severe defeat. Advanced AI could tilt the balance even further. One could avoid a military conflagration altogether. For example, design a deadly bioweapon along with an appropriate vaccine or antidote and present the adversary with an ultimatum: surrender or face extinction within months. Without advanced AI, the adversary may not be able to develop and deploy its own countermeasures in time. Neural networks have already supercharged computational biology. Scenarios that seemed like science fiction until recently have become technically feasible. Jinsen Huang, the CEO of the leading AI hardware manufacturer NVIDIA, has been calling computational biology the next big frontier for years.
I do think that we'll look back and the whole field of digital biology and life sciences has been transformed.
Today, the leaders in AI development are the United States and China. Other countries and blocs lag far behind or haven't yet realized what is at stake. Likewise, AI hardware manufacturing is concentrated in the US and China, with Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and the Netherlands also playing a critical role. The development of AI at scale requires several key ingredients. The first one is talent. Skilled AI engineers are scarce and expensive. Tech companies poach them with record salaries and benefits packages. Early this year, Chinese media reported that Xiaomi's founder hired away a key DeepSeek engineer, Luo Fuli, with an annual salary of $1.3 million. In the US, AI developer salaries were mid-six figures until recently. Since then, offers have gone through the roof. In the summer of 2025, it was reported that OpenAI staff members were offered contracts of up to $100 million over 4 years, and most recently, up to $1 billion. The second ingredient is computational power. Public reports say Elon Musk's xAI invested $3-4 billion in the Colossus One data center, most of it in roughly 230,000 GPUs. Colossus 2's plan to employ over 550,000 GPUs, with a budget reaching $18 billion. Musk's 5-year plan is to scale to 5 million GPUs for more than $100 billion. Other major players are spending on a similar scale. In January 2025, OpenAI announced a joint infrastructure program with SoftBank, Oracle, and MGX totaling $500 billion over 4 years. NVIDIA has been the prime beneficiary of the AI boom. Demand for its best-in-class chips has pushed the company's market value to $4 trillion. Chinese companies are trying to catch up, but they're not there yet. Media reports indicate that the release of the updated version of DeepSeek AI was delayed after Chinese officials asked the company to migrate to Huawei Scent chips. However, these chips are not yet good enough. Only 2 countries in the world are capable of sustaining the full cycle of AI hardware design and manufacture at scale: the United States with the help from Taiwan and China. However, there is a risk that Taiwan could lose its leading-edge manufacturing capacity. In 2021, the US Army War College essay discussed destroying Taiwan's fabs in the event of a war with China, and 2 years later, similar ideas surfaced in the public remarks by US politicians.
Ideas that's floated out there for deterrence is just making it very clear to the Chinese that if you invade Taiwan, we're going to blow up TSMC.
The third ingredient is energy. In 2023, data centers accounted for 3% of total US energy consumption. By the next decade, they are expected to consume as much as 10%. To address potential power shortages, the US government and industry are pushing for rapid growth in generation, relaxing environmental restrictions on coal-fired power, restarting decommissioned nuclear plants, and building new ones. The fourth ingredient is data. Neural networks, the brains of AI, are not programmed. They are trained. Training requires an enormous amount of information, presented in carefully prepared, structured datasets. The fifth ingredient is the AI models themselves. To this day, these models are created by people, though with increasing AI assistance. According to the CEO of Anthropic, most of the company's code is now written with AI help. In this context, designing AI models has become a self-accelerating process, as AI helps create better AI. Countries that develop powerful AI models first gain a competitive advantage that others cannot attain. The current AI race echoes the nuclear race of the mid-20th century. But it is even more dangerous. The threshold for entry into this race is extremely high, requiring tens of billions of dollars, new power plants, and top-tier hardware that may not be available at any price. Large states such as Russia and India should treat AI as a top national priority and spend accordingly. Every major country needs at least 1 or 2 ChatGPT-class AI models. Outside China, it's unlikely that anyone will build NVIDIA-class chips within the next decade. Even with significant investment, catching up to US and Chinese AI hardware technology is extremely difficult for countries under economic sanctions and trade restrictions, leaving buying from China or importing US technology through intermediaries as the only viable ways to procure the necessary AI hardware. It's fair to say, however, that some difficulties on this path may be circumvented. For example, one solution to the staffing problem may be to rely heavily on recruiting the best young talent available. Top students aspiring to build careers in IT, as well as hackathons and competition winners. Training can be done using synthetic data. For instance, robots already train in fully simulated 3D environments quite successfully. AI model training can be distributed across several clusters. Finally, more efficient and therefore less power-hungry hardware architectures may emerge, significantly reducing the demand for computing power and energy. Now, let's look at how AI will change modern warfare. Today's battlefield is an incredibly target-rich environment, and the situation changes so rapidly that most humans struggle to keep up. The automation of all types of military equipment thus becomes inevitable. Modern ISR, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, in part through saturation of the battle space with drones and UAVs, has made it so transparent that a new kind of trench warfare crisis has emerged. Concentrating strike forces has become more difficult and dangerous, meaning there are fewer guns per assault. This in turn leads to a loss of momentum and makes suppressing enemy troops less effective, thereby slowing the advance. In other words, by the time you reach a position that allows you to pin down the enemy, they have had enough time to react and deploy countermeasures. As the direction of the assault becomes clear to the enemy, they immediately deploy ISR capabilities and strike forces to the area, effectively plugging the hole. Pushing the enemy out of a position often does not change much, as moving troops into holding the newly captured ground becomes a prelude to yet another seesaw. No one yet knows how to win a war like this. Effectively penetrating a front spanning dozens of kilometers in depth requires neutralizing an immense number of targets. In contrast, drones and other modern tactical assets enable rapid responses, even to unexpected breakthroughs at the front. Here, new opportunities may be discovered. If two largely AI-run systems collide, the performance of algorithms, sensors and hardware, as well as the overall level of organization, plays a significant role in the conflict. Unbalancing the opponent's system as a whole, from drone logistics to control over individual strike assets, becomes then the primary goal. The side that identifies priority targets and disrupts the enemy's operations across the board wins more quickly. Such conflict resembles an indirect game of StarCraft, where humans manage the architecture of the military rather than individual units. Such an architecture must be flexible and decentralized. It requires not only individual drone soldiers, but also operators distributed throughout the command chain. Human officers and staff will have AI models at their side, serving as analysts and advisors. If a headquarters is hit and command degrades, AI can step in to shoulder part of the load, at least for some time. Some functions will be fully delegated to AI, with air defense being the most likely candidate. Crews operating anti-air batteries already have only seconds to react, and their reaction times are expected to shrink even further. Israel's Iron Dome integrated air defense system is already capable of evaluating threats, setting target priorities, and launching interceptors without direct human involvement at every step. On the ground, the same logic applies. FPV drones are widely used in road ambush missions. Land, wait for the target, take off, and strike. Keeping an operator glued to a monitor for hours makes little sense when AI can watch and react the moment a target comes into view. Imagine an anti-tank mine that rides in on a drone, is dropped off, actively tracks targets on its own, and strikes the most vulnerable one at the right moment. Wars of the near future will feature cauldrons controlled without any physical human presence, relying instead on indirect control over supply routes and communications. Drone crews can already dominate roads from tens of kilometers away. There may be no cauldron marked on the map, but on the ground, escape is often possible only on foot, if you're lucky. Siege warfare is evolving along the same lines. Drones can paralyze logistics inside and around a city by cutting off roads and suppressing military activity. Even without boots on the ground, urban battles of the future will be defined by overlapping fields of fire, colliding and encroaching on one another. In Ukraine, UAVs and FPV drones account for a significant share of casualties, and this trend is expected to spread to other current and future conflicts. Today, human operators pilot individual drones, but that will change as a single operator gains the ability to control an entire swarm. A swarm of 1,000 FPV drones on a free hunt can be devastating. Even if half of the swarm is neutralized, AI already makes this possible. The drone supply remains the real bottleneck. That raises complex questions. Who carries responsibility when AI errs and civilians die? What guardrails keep the system inside bounds? One current example is Israel's operation in Gaza. Media reports describe strikes triggered by an AI system that processes massive amounts of data and proposes targets, with a human approving or rejecting them. Setting Gaza aside, systems like this can, in principle, outperform people. In conflict zones, troops sometimes shoot civilians out of fear over camo pants or harmless object misread as a weapon. Drone dominance and automation will push major powers and blocs to build their own AI models and vertically integrated robot production. Those who hesitate will be left to history. Manpower. In the late 20th century, a new doctrine took hold: the small, high-tech army. After the Soviet collapse, the specter of World War III receded for a time. Soon after, a US-led coalition crushed Saddam Hussein's forces in the Gulf War, live before the entire world. Many concluded that large-scale wars were over. What remained, they thought, was a counterterrorism, peacekeeping, and the occasional spanking of a minor dictator. That was a deadly illusion. War is still a contest of both quality and quantity. In October 2023, Hamas breached Israel's perimeter essentially because manpower and equipment were thin on the ground. Israel spent years methodically trimming its army. A single thin line of Israel's defense gave way under Hamas attack, and for a time, nothing stood in the militants' path. Israel had to mobilize roughly 300,000 people in 2 days. Earlier, a superbly trained high-tech American force, backed by its allies, bogged down in Afghanistan. On paper, it looked like a perfect showcase, a modern army against a primitive foe. In reality, the size of the Allied forces fighting in Afghanistan was inadequately small. Their casualty rate stayed low, although the Taliban likewise avoided major direct clashes. However skilled the soldier, he still has 2 hands, 2 eyes, and he still needs sleep. High-tech has not replaced people in combat yet. In 2021, the United States hastily withdrew from Afghanistan, causing the pro-American government to collapse almost immediately. 20 years of war achieved nothing. The opposite mistake is to bet on numbers. Human wave tactics do not work in contemporary war. Raising masses of cheap, poorly trained troops and trying to drown a high-tech army in cannon fodder waves is not realistic either. A Zerg rush does not work in modern war. The small, high-tech army is a myth. Only large, high-tech armies backed up by strong industrial economies and resilient logistics win wars. As drone numbers grow and automation spreads, soldiers will spend more time undercover and under armor. Whether headcount falls remains an open question. Armies may still number in the hundreds of thousands, or even millions. However, a manifold increase in military equipment is inevitable. New technologies also expand the pool of talent. Operators in the deep rear can run systems just fine, including women in every row. In time, even fully paralyzed people may serve, controlling machines through brain-machine interface implants. Cyborgs and robots. Elon Musk's Neuralink has demonstrated what a brain-computer interface is capable of. The company now has about 10 to 12 patients, and they're becoming proficient with their implants. Physical impairment brings mental deconditioning, but a direct digital link to the brain is a decisive advantage. Crucially, disabled patients can train for long stretches. By Neuralink's figures, they work with the implant 50 to 100 hours. The company plans to implant 3 chips per patient rather than 1. At this pace, thousands of people could have brain chips within a decade. In the military, early candidates would be vehicle and system operators and special operations troops. Picture an air defense operator receiving radar cues straight to the brain. The brain is plastic and with practice can learn those patterns. Beyond implants, exoskeletons are next. Modern infantry carries so much equipment that performance drops. Training helps, but weight still caps the range, speed, and the ammunition a unit can haul. First adopters of exoskeletons are likely to be elite units, logistics, and roles that are heavy on lifting. For artillery numbers and loaders, it saves backs. Foot reconnaissance and mountain troops would benefit as well. Over the longer term, humanoid robots will begin to replace human infantry. For decades, they lived in science fiction. Now they're stepping into the real world. Around 100 startups are building humanoids, and investment is surging, a classic sign that the technology is nearing scale. Why now? 3 reasons. First, artificial intelligence. Hand-coding robots was time-consuming and tedious. Neural networks let robots learn through imitating a demonstration rather than endless manual coding. You can talk to a robot, show it what to do, and let it learn on the job. Second, batteries. Energy storage has become denser and cheaper. Third, computing. Today, GPUs are robust, efficient, and compact enough to fit in a human-sized frame. Not every technical hurdle is cleared. Locomotion remains slower and more awkward than a human gait, though it is improving quickly. And hands are a world of their own. In humans, the pad of the base of the thumb drives the thumb, while many finger muscles live in the forearm and pull through long tendons. Roboticists study anatomy and echo it in metal and plastic. Humanoids make sense because the world is built for human bodies. A helpful robot must open doors, climb stairs, drive vehicles, load crates, carry the wounded, and treat them. Teams have tried designs both more straightforward and more complex than a person, but the human template has proved the most versatile. Early roles will be logistics and explosive ordnance work, hauling, ammo runs, and demining. If something has to lose fingers, better be a robot than a person. Later come assault roles and even staff duties. Robots can go first through a breach and take the first hit. Humanoid will run most of the computing on the board, locally. Cloud control makes little sense in combat, where bandwidth is tight and latency is high. Short uplinks still help. Robots upload data, and shared training improves the whole fleet. Economics may favor robots over people. Companies like Tesla, Figure, and 1X target about $20,000 per unit, with long-term goals below $10,000. Purpose-built combat humanoids will cost more, but even at roughly $100,000, a machine can make sense. It arrives trained, it is on the call aside from charging or a quick battery swap, and it does not draw pay, pensions, or compensation for wounds or death. Military adoption of humanoid robots is a sensitive subject. Brad Adcock, founder and CEO of Figure AI, has stated that his company will not build military robots.
We won't do anything military related at all. It's in our company mandate.
Positions can change, and other firms are less hesitant. Palmer Luckey's Anduril, for example, may move into military humanoids.
There's no moral high ground in saying, I refuse to use AI because I don't want minds to be able to tell the difference between a school bus full of children and Russian armor.
Armor. Drones have redefined the role of armor. Tanks have taken the most brutal hit. They now appear less as breakthrough tools and more as mobile fire support. Tank-on-tank duels have become rare. In the war in Ukraine, the combination of artillery, anti-tank missiles, mines, and small reconnaissance drones has made life exceptionally hard for tanks. Since 2023, small FPV attackers and bomb-dropping quadcopters have made it even worse. Both sides have lost them in large numbers, so tanks now appear in ones and twos, only for short stretches. Against drones, the tank loses on most counts. It cannot outrun them, its gun is short-range and line of sight, and it's expensive. About 10 to 20 FPV kamikaze drones costing hundreds of dollars each can wreck a multi-million-dollar tank. Turtle assault builds sometimes survive 50 to 60 hits, but they are not invincible. Many countries are exploring another path. Small, fast tankettes, strip weight, cut the crew to a minimum or remove it, and trade heavy armor for agility. The tank may endure, but its job is shrinking. Ultra-expensive platforms and Armada-class concepts risk gathering dust. Infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, and other armor face the same challenge. firepower matters less than survivability and cost. Armor is still needed though, as some protection beats long sprints under open sky. Armored personnel carriers will still be needed in large numbers, but they must evolve. The Bradley-style layout fits modern war better than most. Engine up front, a wide rear ramp, plenty of sensors, and a small caliber gun with ammunition unlikely to tear the hull apart if hit. Even so, that is only a starting point. IFVs and APCs will get better armor, pushing toward tank-level protection. Active protection stops being a luxury and becomes a lifeline. Big guns give way to anti-drone fits, anti-air machine guns and shotguns most likely fully automated. Sensor suits will thicken with cameras around the hull. Drones become standard kit, scouts to spot, interceptors to defend the armor, and assault drones to hit targets. However, even after cutting costs, armored vehicles are still far pricier than civilian transport. Future wars, like past ones, will lean on civilian industry. When armor runs out and the military industry cannot keep up, units reach for what is at hand: motorcycles, quads, buggies, pickups, vans. A country with a strong auto industry or access to imports will not be left without wheels. Today's tanks are battleships in miniature, and drones serve as aircraft. The last time that happened, battleships clashed between armor and drones, resembling naval warfare in the early 20th century. Aircraft, especially carrier air wings, pushed battleships and battlecruisers off the stage. Battleships and heavy cruisers disappeared, and where naval guns survived, they shrank in number and caliber. Artillery and MLRs. Ukraine is the first war in decades where artillery has returned at full height. In 2023, both sides fired lavishly, volume over precision. 3 years on, guns reach farther and heat cleaner, and counter-battery fire arrives within minutes. Tactics followed suit. A typical rhythm now is shoot and scoot, roll in, fire a short burst, roll out before return fire or drones find the position. Permanent gun pits with piles of shells are an invitation to fireworks. Heavy-towed guns are giving way to self-propelled pieces. Quick, rapid-firing, long-range, and precise. Drones cause most losses today, but artillery still matters when a few hundred kilos of explosives must hit one spot from far away, and fast. Gun artillery has natural limits. Caliber and range cannot grow forever. Past a certain point, rockets make more sense. The niche for guns has narrowed, and it may narrow further. Multiple launch rocket systems feel similar evolutionary pressure. The lightest sets, think Grad class, are the least useful now. Modern MLRs need speed, reach, punch, precision, per-rocket targeting, and fast pack reloads. Heavy MLRs will likely eat into both tube artillery and their lighter cousins, and as their range and warheads grow, they edge toward operational tactical systems. Even now, it's not always obvious whether a strike came from an Iskander or from a tornado. Aviation. Modern war is rough unmanned air power. Air defenses are layered and dense, jets are costly, and every pilot is a scarce asset. Beyond classic surface-to-air missiles, SAMs, lasers and interceptor drones are entering the fight. Some claim the Ukrainian conflict has proven that air power has hit an evolutionary wall. With defenses this thick, air superiority is hardly attainable. Hence, aircraft are left to operate as raiders. They take off, release bombs or missiles at the edge of the enemy's air defense zone, then turn away. However, it's too soon to call it a dead end for military aviation. Dense air defense systems can be penetrated. The 1991 Gulf War proved it. During that conflict, the United States methodically took Iraq's air defenses apart, layer by layer. In 2025, Iran's air defense was far from being cutting edge, but it should have been sufficient to counter Israel's air power. In reality, Iran only managed to shoot down a couple of drones, large, slow, easy targets. Israeli F-35s and F-15s flew deep into Iran's territory, reaching the center of the country. Iran demonstrated a poorly organized military system. A well-run, layered air defense is dangerous even for the top-tier air forces, such as Israel or the US. Attack helicopters suffer the most. They fly low and slow, so almost anything can hit them. Manpads anti-tank missiles, machine guns, and drones. Their efficiency level has dropped. Attack helicopters are now using autocannons to shoot down drones. Unguided rockets spread wide and hit too softly. So, close-in runs make sense only against the weakest targets. What still works is guided missiles. Precise shots at 10 to 20 kilometers. So, why risk an Apache or a Ka-52 $10 million and a two-person crew when a $1,000 drone can bring it down? Against drones, attack helicopters lose on almost every count. Expendable interceptors can handle drone kills. Guided missiles can ride on other drones or launch from the ground. Unmanned systems can also react rapidly to unexpected frontline breaches. Yes, a helicopter can function as a drone carrier, but the cleaner answer is to go straight for large fighter drones and motherships. Transport helicopters remain essential. Recon and attack helos may be living out of their last days. India is still buying them in large quantities, but many countries are already stepping away. In 2024, the United States cancelled the FARA attack reconnaissance helicopter program. In 2025, Poland froze Black Hawk purchase after studying the war in Ukraine. The current operators will likely continue to use their existing fleet of attack helicopters, gradually replacing them with drones as the helicopters age. Fixed-wing strike aircrafts have a more leisurely ride. At altitude, only heavy SAMs or fighters can reach them, and only if they can see them. Stealth is no longer in dispute. It has proved itself in combat. In June, Israeli F-35s were the first to enter Iran's airspace, and American B-2s dropped bombs on Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities. Around the world, most next-gen aircraft are designed with stealth in mind. The US B-21 Raider and F-47, Russia's S-70s Okhotnik, a new strategic bomber, and both of China's next-generation fighters use tailless flying wing layouts. AI will push pilots out of cockpits, though it will do so more slowly than it will replace the helicopter crews. The upside is clear. People are fragile and slow. Machines decide faster, don't tire, don't need life support, and don't need rescue if they go down. Fully autonomous AI-powered strike aircraft are already being tested, but by most accounts, AI isn't ready to stand in for a human. It will appear in supporting roles first, under the loyal wingman model. Crewed jets launch with a small pack of UAVs that handle tanking, extend the radar picture, carry extra weapons, and shield the formation, drawing fire if needed. Pilots still set priorities and make the calls. Bottom line, more drones, fewer people in the cockpit. How fast and how far that goes is still an open question. Early trials with AI at the controls say it's not time to retire human pilots. Yet. One caveat: stealth emphasis applies more to manned aircraft than drones. The US and China are rolling out waves of new UAVs, many of which are not stealthy. For drones, the emphasis is on numbers and low cost. Air defense. Air defense is in true revolution. Surface-to-air missiles on land, at sea, and in the air are getting faster, more accurate, and longer ranged. By some estimates, Russia's S-500 can reach about 600 kilometers, engage hypersonic targets, strike up to around 200 kilometers in altitude, and trek up to an estimated 2,000 kilometers. China, thinking about Taiwan, wants to be able to hit enemy ships and aircraft far from its shores, pushing the development of extremely long-range missiles. Reports last year described a ground-based missile with a range of nearly 2,000 kilometers, an unprecedented figure, more than triple that of the S-500. For now, it looks like an early-stage project. A prototype may not even exist. Beyond speed and range, heavy SAM systems are getting more flexible. The US Typhoon launcher can fire both SM-6 and Tomahawk missiles. The SM-6 can hit airborne targets and ships. Big and medium SAMs are evolving steadily. The real surge is in the small stuff. The flood of mini-drones is forcing cheap, compact interceptors onto anything that moves. Or doesn't. Buggies, pickups, unmanned boats, small UAVs, helicopters, towers, even inside shipping containers. Air-to-air weapons are moving too. Europe's Meteor carries a ramjet, so instead of burning out and coasting like a solid-fuel rocket, it keeps pushing almost to intercept. That helps chase maneuvering targets and eases dependence on launch height and distance. Its range is often quoted as above 200 kilometers, In service since 2016, Meteor is still unique in its class. According to media accounts, China and India are also developing ramjet air-to-air missiles. Missile defenses are evolving, but the step change is in directed energy, lasers and microwaves. Lasers have finally turned the corner and are entering service in several countries. They can hit a wide range of targets, from satellites and missiles to small drones and lightly protected craft, such as cars and boats. Weak spots remain: a high power draw and poor performance in dusty or high humidity environments. Upsides: precision, low cost per shot, and magazines limited mainly by power. Missiles cost more per engagement, and SAM batteries are often naked once they've fired their missiles. Counting only power, a laser shot looks cheap. Add wear and tear, and the real cost climbs. Moreover, missiles aren't always effective against small targets. Footage from recent conflicts shows SAMs missing small UAVs, unsurprisingly, as heavy SAMs were built for larger targets. High-power microwave weapons are close to fielding. They disrupt swarms, not just single drones, and many countries are testing them. Lasers and microwaves can't do it all. Mass drone attacks bring guns and shot-dispensing weapons back into fashion, along with interceptor drones. For now, interceptors offer the best cost-to-effect ratio. This started in Ukraine. Both sides first repurposed FPV quadcopters as interceptors. Now, dedicated designs are entering service. All that is strike assets. First, targets have to be found. Recent wars show no country has an unbroken, impermeable air defense system. Classic air defenses were built for small numbers of large targets: missiles, jets, and helicopters. Now, a single raid can send 1,000 or more medium and large UAVs, and soon it could be tens of thousands, reaching deep into the rear. The answer is a denser sensor web. Radars are big and emitting, easy to spot, and high on the priority target list. They're destroyed by drones, ballistic, cruise, anti-radar missiles from the air, and by ATGMs and drones from the ground. In June 2025, Israel's campaign reportedly opened with a sabotage mission against the elements of Iran's air defense network. New air defense systems will mix classic radars with many small passive posts, along with optical and acoustic sensors. They're cheaper, smaller, easier to hide, and don't give themselves away with emissions. Ukraine's Sky Fortress is one example. A mesh of microphones sends data over cellular networks. This data is collected and analyzed with machine learning algorithms that identify targets by sound. This won't help against ballistic missiles or high-flying jets, but it works against cruise missiles, drones, and helicopters. Most importantly, it's stealthy and cheap. Microphones are hard to find and hardly worth the cost of destroying them. Space warfare. Let's climb to orbit. Low Earth orbit begins at around 160 kilometers. Over the last 15 years, space has undergone a significant transformation. Launch costs keep going down and satellite counts keep rising. In 2024, there were 261 orbital launchers worldwide, 138 of which were by SpaceX. Of more than 12,000 satellites in orbit, more than 8,000 belong to Elon Musk's company. Reusable rocket stages made this boom possible. Few argue for expendable cargo boosters anymore. Cheaper access makes militarization inevitable. For now, the military uses space primarily for reconnaissance and communications. The most valuable US contribution to Ukraine was Starlink. Terminals are everywhere. At the front, on drones, on unmanned boats. Competitors in the US and abroad are racing to field Starlink-style constellations. Satellite reconnaissance has existed since the 1960s, but cheaper launches and satellites changed the game. In June 2025, the Pentagon floated cutting purchases of E-7 Wedgetail AWACS, covering the gap with Navy E-2D Hawkeyes and larger space layer. The logic? Blanket the planet with space-based radar and buy fewer expensive and large AWACS planes. As of now, the debate in Washington over whether satellites can replace aircraft is still not settled, and skeptics have a point. Low-orbit constellations see a lot, but mostly missiles and significant ground or surface targets. Reliable, routine tracking of aircraft from space is expected in the early 2030s, and military experts say the task is complex. Satellites cannot replace AWACS yet. They fly at least 20 times higher and stay on predetermined orbits. Global coverage demands a vast constellation. Doable in principle, but difficult. From orbit, it's harder to follow low-flying, small targets against complex backgrounds. Satellites are also relatively defenseless. They can be hit from the ground or by killer satellites, and AWACS can simply leave the danger zone. In 2010s, Russia first showcased a new generation of nuclear delivery systems. Burevestnik, Poseidon, and Vanguard. In today's environment, Burevestnik's edge may erode. Its advantages include an unlimited range and the ability to approach from poorly defended directions. Today's satellites can spot its booster flare at launch and during climb. After the ramjet lights, tracking is harder. A dense network of multispectral sensors would improve detection, but it will be still tough. Low altitude, small radar cross-section, passive profile, terrain and weather, and someone still has to stop it near the ground. Vanguard has a brighter IR signature and flies higher, so it's easier to track end-to-end. That doesn't guarantee a kill. Extreme speed, altitude, and maneuvering keep intercept odds low. Bottom line, space-based reconnaissance will take work off AWACS, but won't retire them. The future is a mix of space and aircraft ISR. Another role for military space is missile defense. Today, that job is handled by ground and sea-based interceptors, some of which reach into near space. In theory, interceptors could be stationed in orbit, as in late 1980s US Brilliant Pebbles concept. A few months ago, Washington floated the Golden Dome missile defense program, a revival of the Brilliant Pebbles concept, but at a higher technological level. Upgraded ground interceptors, including lasers, and expanded space component for detection and targeting, and potentially orbiting interceptors. The last element is the most controversial and challenging. No decision has been made yet, and there is no guarantee that a system of such scale will ever be fielded. Reliable kills typically require multiple interceptors, and actual effectiveness would demand a vast satellite constellation, an enormously expensive undertaking. Adversaries, in turn, can build more missiles or respond asymmetrically with cheaper means. Russia's Poseidon is one such example. In the future, offensive space weapons will appear as well. Treaties limit them for now, but paper holds only as long as technology and cost do. Kinetic space weapons, also referred to as rods from God, look great on screen, less so on spreadsheets. Lifting dense mass to orbit is costly. On low orbits, coverage is limited and satellites move quickly. Blanketing even one large country would require hundreds of thousands of platforms. From geostationary orbit, the time to target is long. Satellites are vulnerable compared to literally everything. Submarines, ships, aircraft, mobile launchers, and silos are much more robust as a solution. So, for now, tungsten rods are unrealistic. Lasers and microwaves look more promising. In 10-20 years, the first orbital solar power stations may come online, beaming energy to Earth in the form of microwaves. With power on tap in orbit, that energy could feed space-based lasers and microwave emitters. Don't expect city-scorching ion cannons. For the next decade or two, power levels will mainly reach targets in space and maybe dazzle high-flying aircraft. Any shooting in orbit poses a risk to everyone. Explosions create debris clouds that can cascade. In a worst-case scenario, much or even all orbital infrastructure could be disabled, and launches could become difficult or even impossible for everyone. Orbit would then have to be cleaned up, otherwise years could pass before dangerous debris deorbits on its own. Anyone itching for a fight in orbit will answer to the whole planet. One more military use is rocket-borne transport. SpaceX pitches Starship for Earth-to-Earth hops, reaching almost anywhere in approximately 30 minutes. But Starship can't just drop in. Splashdowns off a coast are realistic. On land, you need prepared pads. Regular concrete or asphalt erodes under the plume, risking the vehicle. In theory, it can carry up to 100 people, a company-sized unit. In practice, early runs are more likely to move heavy cargo. Navy. Back down to the sea. The fleet is changing too. For centuries, warships grew larger. Today's destroyers can be massive. The Zumwalt class outweighs many early 20th century battleships. That age of gigantism is ending. Long-range precision weapons are widely available now. Even Yemen has them. Drones and cruise missiles can launch from river sea boats. Small unmanned skiffs can even shoot down modern fighters like manpads. At sea, the same imbalance is forming as on land. Large, expensive ships versus small, very cheap, increasingly unmanned craft. In early 2025, the US struck targets in Yemen. Public reports say Houthi drones did not damage the US task group. But imagine, swarms of drones instead of singles. A raid of 1,000 kamikaze unmanned surface vehicles might cost $100 to $200 million. One hit of a major enemy's vessel could make the entire raid worthwhile. A US carrier with its wing costs $15 to $20 billion and carries close to 5,000 sailors and airmen. The threat is not only drones. Civilian ships can be turned into raiders. A classic trick. Today you can hide cruise missiles or SAMs in standard shipping containers and bolt them onto a cargo ship. War games of a US-China conflict raise a blunt risk. Missiles, mines and drones could burn through big ships fast, leaving a fight carried mainly by unmanned craft and converted merchant hulls. China has the advantage here, building ships and drones quickly and in larger numbers. Most of tomorrow's fleet will be drones, surface vessels and underwater vessels. Big warships won't vanish, but there will be fewer of them. Size still matters. Seakeeping, range, room for weapons and sensors, but big hulls are costly, and each loss is critical. Submarines for now are better off than surface ships. That edge will shrink as small unmanned subs spread. It's hard to hide when thousands of robots comb the sea, and drones can stay down far longer than crewed boats. Picture a robotic sub lying on the seabed near Severomorsk, Shanghai or Guam, waiting for a hostile submarine to pass. In an ambush, it makes almost no noise and sips power only for sensors, computers, and heating. Civil shipping is even more exposed. During the two world wars, thousands of transports sank. Those ships were smaller and the world was less globalized. Now, almost every country depends on ocean trade, and the merchant fleet consists of a relatively small number of giant ships. In 2023, sea transport accounted for 80% of international trade, and total merchant deadweight stood at around 2.4 billion tons, tens of times the scale of World War II. If transports start going down en masse, the world runs short of everything, from phones and cars to slippers and motor fuel. Replacing losses would take years, or we would have to back away from globalization. Engineering and camouflage. Each new war increases both firepower and the industrial capacity to produce it. In World War II, American and British air forces dropped 2.9 million tons of bombs in Europe. A quarter century later, small Cambodia absorbed 2.7 million tons. In our time, tiny Gaza saw more than 70,000 tons in the first year, according to open estimates. Drones and satellites have made the battle space transparent, deep into the rear and in time across all of it. At the front, troops try to leave cover as rarely as possible. Firing positions are built to disappear. Look closely. Do you see the tank? It's there. The rear won't be safe either, and several consequences follow. Dig in and deeper. Headquarters, airfields, key data centers, factories, and depots will have to move underground. Iran and North Korea have done this for years because they can't count on air defense. Others will have to follow. Example: reports point to a new water pipeline in Nikolaev, built after the old one was destroyed. Tunneling is slow and expensive. A step change is needed. Elon Musk's Boring Company aimed for a pace of more than 11 kilometers per day. However, In 2024, the media reported that the actual rate was only 40 to 46 meters per day. The front needs rapid underground works too, including shelters and buried links. In Ukraine, assault teams have more than once slipped into the enemy's rear through tunnels. Not everything can go below. And you can't live there forever. Sometimes you have to surface. And every appearance is a risk. To cut that risk in the rear, forces will try to blend with the surroundings, wear civilian clothing where possible, and use civilian vehicles for movement. That, in turn, pushes towards total war. When you can't tell soldiers from civilians, the pressure rises to treat everything as a target. Quantum computers. For years, quantum computers were the perennial, almost here technology. Much like thermonuclear fusion energy, in the 1960s it was common to hear the phrase 30 years away. 40 years later, give it another 30. That joke is wearing thin. Fusion now looks plausible with a boom in startups. Quantum computing seems closer still, with a real chance of commercial systems in 2030s. Militaries are watching two things most closely: communications and intelligence. Quantum computers could cut through today's encryption fast enough to matter in operations. It's long been suspected that major powers already vacuum up encrypted traffic and archive it, waiting to decrypt it once the hardware arrives. Deciphering may even already be happening in secret. Quantum computing is one of the few fields where a breakthrough can stay quiet for a while. However, the security threats posed by quantum computers are manageable. Post-quantum cryptography already exists, but it still needs to be deployed. Additionally, hardware will need to be upgraded to accommodate it. Until then, even Bitcoin's network is under threat. Going extinct. The drone revolution is shrinking whole categories of hardware and military trades. Snipers are still with us, but drones are eroding their role. Drones do most of what snipers do, and more. They apply psychological pressure, engage targets out of sight, enter buildings, and can carry explosives rather than kinetic rounds. Two advantages remain for snipers. You cannot jam a human with electronic warfare, and a human shooter can observe for longer than a UAV can on its best battery. Even so, the sniper's role is shrinking. Airborne forces still have uses as well. What's in doubt is the need for them at the current scale, and for their dedicated equipment. Paratroopers have been around for 100 years. In big wars between near-peer armies, large airdrops were rare and rarely successful. Crete in 1941 was a surprise success, yet the Germans themselves assessed the experience as a negative one and ceased further parachute operations. Normandy in 1944 worked. However, that one took place alongside a far larger amphibious landing. Operation Market Garden began well, but turned out to be a complete failure. The Dien Bien Phu landing looked like a win at first, however, the force was surrounded and later surrendered. In Ukraine, there have been no large parachute drops. At Hostomel, Russian troops arrived by helicopters and landed on the airfield without heavy equipment. Airdrops may work against a weaker opponent. Against a comparable force, they are a risky gamble, facing numerous challenges. Transport aircraft must force their way through hostile skies. Paratroopers scatter over a wide area and must regroup. Resupplying them is difficult or impossible, and their equipment is lighter because it is adapted for airborne delivery. What remains for paratroopers is a narrow niche, limited raids or helicopter insertions under cover of electronic warfare, friendly air defenses and drones. Large drops are possible only if enemy air defenses are suppressed, and no extended isolation is expected, such as on a distant flank where the enemy cannot amass overwhelming power. Open sources suggest that in the Taiwan scenario, China is betting first on an amphibious landing with purpose-built ships that move heavy equipment and can line up as makeshift piers. War is the final referee. It calls the score fast and forces a change. But the need for change does not always bring about change. People are inert and tend to cling to the familiar and delay hard decisions. The old ways do not die off immediately, but instead fight to the last round. Iran spent decades expecting strikes from Israel and the US, and still met them unprepared. Small drones proved their point in conflicts across the Middle East 10 years ago. Most of the world looked away at the time. Technology is essential, but it's not everything. Victories are not won by the best equipment alone. They are won by entire systems. To prevail, a system must learn faster, adapt more effectively, and endure stress better over the long term. Only time will tell which systems are destined to fail and which are to prevail.